Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again today for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 4, Episode 8, Safety for the Witness, starring Art Carney. I've tried to be positive since I started doing reviews again. I think sometimes maybe I'm a little too picky, a little too harsh. But I also have to be honest, and I have to say I did not enjoy this episode, Safety for the Witness, at all. I just don't think the plot is that interesting. I don't think the acting is particularly great, other than Art Carney, who I know is a legendary actor. He does a pretty good job, but he's given nothing to work with. I also thought the tone of this episode was really bad. There's like humorous music behind this serious situation, and I'm not really sure what they were going for, but this episode just didn't work for me. Even the beginning with Alfred Hitchcock, which is usually interesting, where he's talking about duels, isn't particularly noteworthy in my opinion. This honestly felt like a filler episode. So we start with this guy, Mr. Jones, and he's selling rifles. He owns a shop, and this lieutenant comes in and wants to talk to him about if there was a gun sold to somebody named Mr. Foley. And eventually they get around to talking about protecting witnesses, and Mr. Jones says he doesn't think witnesses are protected well enough, which kind of gets the lieutenant a little bit annoyed, you can tell. So we go to the next scene, and of course Mr. Jones sees this Mr. Foley and another guy when he's walking down the street. I guess he's walking home, or who knows. So at this point Mr. Jones sees like a killing, and he gets shot. And I have to say, this scene was very poorly done. I know TV didn't have the budgets they do now, but I thought this might even be a dream sequence or something, because this whole scene was just not believable to me. But it is what it is. We go to the next scene, and we're in the hospital, and the lieutenant is there with the police commissioner, and they want Jones to say who did this to you. Was it Foley or someone else? And Jones won't talk. Then there's this bizarre scene where a nurse kicks the police out and starts questioning Jones herself, which leads to nothing in the episode. I have no idea why this was here, but I thought it was strange, to be honest. So after he gets questioned about Foley, which leads to nothing, Jones is released from the hospital, and you can tell he's very nervous. He's nervous to even walk down the street. He's nervous to answer his phone because he thinks someone will be after him at this point. So it turns out he goes to this hotel, and he wants to be up on the 6th floor. And, I'm thinking, oh, maybe he's nervous. That's why he wants to be on a high up floor. It'll be harder to get to him. But it turns out he brings a gun with him, and he shoots Foley and this other guy. He actually kills them himself. So then he goes to turn himself into the police. This guy who didn't want to talk about any of this all of a sudden wants to turn himself in. The whole thing is pretty illogical and doesn't really make sense. But I guess you just got to go with it. And then what's even weirder is the police don't believe him. They're skeptical. It seems like Jones doesn't really have enough evidence to get himself in trouble. So I guess he didn't plan this out very well, and the police don't really seem like they really want to look into this either. Like I said, none of this really makes a lot of sense. It's all quite bizarre, and the tone of this is weird too. There's like this comic type music behind this serious situation. Didn't really work for me. So Jones continues to try and explain that he killed him. So eventually he says his logic is because if he wouldn't have killed Foley and this other guy, they would have gotten him. So in a way it was like self-defense. So finally the police decide to lock him up for some reason. Who knows why. They said just kind of make something up. So then we get another weird scene where the police are concerned about Jones's behavior. Because they say that this case will prove his point about witnesses not being safe. Okay, whatever you say. So then, the end of the episode, strange as well, Jones just kind of gets released, and that's kind of it. I thought maybe Alfred Hitchcock would give us something great at the end, but he just talks more about the duel, and he talks about how the next group of police handle things differently or something. At this point, I really didn't care. Like I said, this episode to me was kind of uninteresting. It is kind of watchable. It's not the worst episode I've ever seen, but it's pretty bad, and I can only give this one a 1.5 out of 5. Like I said, it's not quite bad enough to be in the 1 range. Art Carney does what he can, and the episode's not, completely boring. There is some flow to it, but it's just too illogical for me. I didn't really buy it, and I thought the tone of the episode was off as well. If anyone liked this episode more than me, or if I missed something, you can feel free to leave a comment, but just a 1.5 out of 5 for me for Safety for the Witness. As always, thanks for watching.